if it's okay with you guys, start with Jill. Jill, is that okay with you?
Yes, that's okay with me.
Okay. I wanted to say, I do, Jill, want you to introduce yourself, but I want to say that it's interesting because similar to Sarah, Jill is both an artist and a literary person. Jill has been my editor and proofreader for a very long time now and does such a phenomenal job. Our relationship and connection through words, through the work, has just been so rewarding and fulfilling. And I depend upon Jill more than I can say. I also, though, am just blown away by her artwork, and I think one of the few people on the planet so far that got to read her book, which I hope everyone will get to read soon. But it was, a generous work of art, and really enjoyed it so much. Can't wait till more people get to see that and your artwork. But thank you so much for being here from London, and thank you for sharing. And please tell everybody about yourself and then share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. That's really kind. It's really funny that we've known each other so long and so well, but never spoken actually until today.
Yeah, that is
out loud anyway. Yes, so my name's Jill. I'm an artist. I play with the idea of what kind of artist I am, because I'm involved in visual arts, creative writing, research, and trained as a portrait artist in a classical atelier. So my background is actually very traditional. And then several years ago, through circumstances I'll explain, I sort of went on this detour and now find that I'm just sort of a little bit everywhere. And just trying to accept that that's who I am, and that's okay. I don't have to box myself in. And so I've been in London about 10 years and settled here now. And so it's really great to be here with you guys in Florida. If you're all in Florida, Georgia, I don't remember where everybody is. But what I'll do is I'll share my screen. So I've got a couple of different things I could share with you today. One of them is this project that Michael is just talking about with this book. And I think I'll share it during the panel later. Unless there's extra time here, I could share it now. But so I thought I'd share a couple of things I've done during the pandemic, just to show a little bit, I guess, about what I'm about.
Hey, Jill, let me just say, I'm going to make you the host, which I think is what has to happen for you to share. I'm going to try that now and see if that works.
I think, yeah, the other thing you might be able to do is when you click on share screen, are there options for you to allow anyone to share their screen as the host?
Let's see. Okay, yes. Try that. Thank you. See if that works.
Okay. Yes, it does. So, okay. Okay, so I thought I'd just talk a little bit about how things have shifted for me coming into this pandemic. So I have a studio south of the Thames River in London. I live north of the Thames River quite a distance. So to get to my studio is about an hour and a half bike ride. I usually use public transport. And when we went into lockdown here, we were told we were allowed to leave the house once a day for exercise. And so there was no option for me really to try to keep working in the studio. And so suddenly I was trying to do everything at home and trying to work on projects that a lot of my work it unfolds over a long period of time. So they're not quick, short projects, but these sort of long research-based kind of explorations and things. And so suddenly I was in this totally different circumstance and thought, I have no idea how I'm going to do this or what I'm going to do. But one of the things that came out of this period for me was that I started running. And so when I was out running, I started collecting things, plants and fallen buds of flowers and things. And I started to experiment with different ways of working that were really immediate and out of my control, weren't really much about research or anything, but just developing immediate results. And so one of the things I did was a series of lumen prints. And lumen prints are made by taking photographic paper that then you can lie a negative on, or you can lie organic matter on. and pressed between, you know, a board and a piece of glass, and then exposed to the sun. And then whatever is on that paper, you know, will develop into an image. And depending on how long it's exposed, you'll get a really bright white image, or you'll get actually a really detailed picture of that organic matter, so flower, plant. And so this picture of me at my table here, obviously just back from a run, too excited to wait, so putting things in. There's a tray of fixer and then a tray of water. So the fixer just freezes the development so that the photo doesn't overdevelop, and then the water just washes it clean and you let it dry. So I thought I'd just show a couple of these images, and they're really incredible because they're quite, I mean, there are these ethereal things. They're quite muted in their tones. As they're developing, they're super bright. The paper gets vibrant blue. When you remove the flower or the matter off of the paper, there'll be all kinds of bright colors under them. And as soon as you put them in that fixer, they just tone down. And at first I was quite disappointed because it's such a difference from what they look like as they're developing. But in the end, I mean, I find them really beautiful, and I know I made them, but I don't feel like I made them. I feel like they made themselves, and I was just sort of the facilitator helping them along. And they're just wonderful because I couldn't really control much about what was happening, and the water or the moisture in the flowers would react with the paper, so you'd get different kind of effects. And you can see actually on the poppy, there's this blue streak, and that's where some of the organic matter from the poppy petal just kind of embedded into the paper. And these two, the one on the left is a big flower bud, and that isn't actually a stem, it's moisture that dripped down from that flower bud and kind of created these shapes around it. And so for me, this was a real departure from the way I've been working, but it was as from the last session Sarah was talking about, it was a distraction. It was a way for me to just kind of be really present, be present outside, looking at my surroundings, watching the way nature was changing, and then bringing that back and incorporating that into my creative practice. And then I also wanted to share another project, and this is a project, I'll show you the finished result in a second, but called In Memoriam. And I had done in April a residency, a 1-week online residency. And I went into that residency thinking I'd work on one of these big projects that are sort of unfolding. And then suddenly I just couldn't work with what I had been working with. And instead I'd been struggling with all of the deaths that were happening every day and the way they were being reported. And I had started writing down the numbers of deaths as they were reported by the media here in the UK. And I felt like I needed to do something with that, somehow to process it, but also because I realized, you know, these were more than numbers. And I remember when I first heard there were, 380 deaths, and I just thought, oh my God, that's almost 500. Suddenly, you know, things were just jumping up, but it was still somehow numbers, not people, not individuals. And this blue fabric is a cyanotype. So similar to the lumen print, I would coat the fabric with a chemical mixture that you let dry in the dark. And when you expose it to the sun, whatever you put on it will leave a trace. So if it's a negative, as this is a negative from an observatory that had mapped the night sky. And I've got about 100 of these mapping different sections of the night sky. And so I was on a residency in Italy a few years ago and made many of these, and had a few that I'd sort of forgotten about that were sitting around the house, and I took out and then started thinking about death and what those deaths mean. And my dad died when I was in my mid-30s, and I grew up Christian, but when he died, you know, I'd explored other religions, and then when he died, something changed for me, and I just lost all faith and sort of lost connection to things. And the connection that I rediscovered or discovered was a connection to nature and to life and the universe. And that is my faith now, and that is my spirituality, is this really super strong connection to this thing. So in a way it is quite spiritual, but this life that's bigger than us. And so I associated that very closely with the death of my father. And then I began to associate that with the deaths of, you know, these people, all of these individuals who are dying from COVID. And so this image is just, you know, it's reflective of this ritual almost that I had set out, you know, with these threads you know, the tools that I was using, and then the stitching that I began doing, and using these blue threads to bring in the dates and the passing of time that was sort of integrated into the universe. And then the other threads were all shades of skin tones, which actually I did some research into. There was another artist who'd done a project who had tried to use these Pantone colors, trying to map all these different shades of skin tones. And I happened to have this big group of threads at home. So just drawing at what I had around, but then doing a bit of research as well, and trying to pull in, you know, this really diverse element to what was happening as well, because of the increased deaths among different populations, you know. And yeah, and so this image on the left begins March 5th with the first recorded death at the time, and it ends April 8th with 938 dead on that day. And hopefully you can see it. I don't know if you're on a phone, it might be quite tiny. But on the right, image on the right, I just wanted to get a sense of the texture, because one of the unfortunate things about having something like this during a period like this where you can't exhibit it in person is that it's really hard to get that sense, I think, of the texture of it's a very tactile piece. So I did 3 squares. I stopped at 100 days. I wasn't really sure how to stop or when to stop. It was just something I felt compelled to do. But as time went on, and it's hard to say, but I also became a bit like used to the deaths, and it became, I had a really hard time holding on to that connection over time. You know, as I got into this last panel, something had shifted and I had a hard time really holding on to that ritual. And that's a really strange thing to say out loud, but it's the truth of it. And so I just decided to honor what I had done and honor those lives in that process. And you'll see at the bottom, it says 41,554 lives lost over 100 days. And so it's something that for me just marks, it honors those people, but it also marks my own process of trying to deal with what we're all trying to deal with in this time. I think that's it. I have another project I could talk about, but I realize there are a lot of us here, so I didn't want to take too much time. So I don't know, Michael.
That was amazing. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So incredible and so moving. Thank you so much. What I'd like to do is do our 2 other visual artists that are showing, and then come back to you at the end and let you do the other one, if that would work.
If there's time, but yeah, no worries.
I believe we'll have time for sure. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Heather, how about you? Are you ready? We'll go to Heather and then to Sarah. And all right. So let me see. I guess I don't have to change the host now. So Heather, are you sharing your screen?
I'm not now, but are
you going to in your presentation?
Yeah, I will.
And it looks like you can. You're good?
Yeah, I see an option, yeah, so.
Okay. Heather's another multi-talented artist that lives, in our area, in our region. And that means those of us who are in this area get to see her evolution as an artist. And I've gotten to know Heather. I guess we met back when she had her gallery. We did a play. We did some events there, I think, a play and maybe a book signing and stuff. Anyway, some really cool exhibits, and it was just a great place. And I'm mourn it not being with us anymore. But it's cool to see an artist develop over time and see their progression and just see their work evolve. And we've gotten to do that with Heather, and I'm so grateful. She's so talented, and she's a great teacher as well. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to what you're going to share.
Well, thank you. That was a very kind introduction. Hi. I just threw together several images, probably more than several, of the past. Let's see, the earliest piece was 2017, so the past 3 years. And I guess before I show that, I can just kind of briefly say that, kind of similar to what Jill was saying, that I come from a much more like realistic background as an artist, and I got tighter and tighter and tighter into realism, and I felt like it didn't quite match, I don't know, me as much, you know. I didn't feel as I don't know, I felt like my work was almost getting somewhat rigid. And at that time in my life, it's funny to say it now, but at that time in my life, I felt a loss of control over a lot of things, not knowing, of course, that, you know, still in my future was a Category 5 hurricane destroying my life, and then a global pandemic. But the things back then felt real big, and they still were. But anyways, and so kind of through these changes in my life, this loss of control that I had, and my work becoming more and more rigid, I started to kind of yearn to play more with my work, and yearn for like really expressive color, and yearn for moments of abstraction. My work for many years has been about our connection to the environment, and I wanted to feel, I realized that my work was viewed a little bit more solemnly than what I felt. And so I wanted to feel more celebratory about a symbiotic relationship with nature. Again, similar to Jill, that's kind of like my version of spirituality, is connection with nature, and trying to share that with others through my work. So let me do a little screen share. Okay, so this is one of the pieces out of my Blooming series. I had switched to watercolor, and I switched to watercolor because it is known as a very playful medium, and this is a 20 by 30 piece, so it's kind of large, and I really just piled on the water and really allowed it to swirl. And through all of these works that I played and experimented, you know, I became more comfortable with a loss of control in my work, which really honestly helped me better with my loss of control in my life, as well as, like I said, kind of expressing a little bit more of a celebration of, you know, the symbiotic relationship with nature. But also, it's hard for me to let go of that portraiture. So I also have, you know, combined my portraits in with these wild abstractions. And I like the, you know, the juxtaposition of just totally loose, free abstractions with tight realism, and, you know, kind of what that does, telling the story of that connection, with between ourselves and with nature. So yeah, that's the short of it for this series here. I'm just gonna kind of flip through. Like I said, I didn't really super prepare much, other than I was like, I don't know, I'll just show him some art, see what happens.
Hey, Heather, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry if I missed this, but now this was prior to the storm, all of these?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
these were prior to the storm.
Okay, just wanted
I
to
do have some that were post-storm that I'll get to. So yeah, these were prior to the storm, but still kind of, again, about kind of accepting my own lack of control in life, because I consider myself an existentialist, in that my life is what I make it. You know, if my life sucks, it's probably my own fault, and, you know, if it's great, then yay me. And that had really worked quite well for me for a lot of years, until there were so many things like family health issues and things like that were completely out of my control. And, you know, I'd been really lucky in life before that to not have to deal so much with things that wildly out of my control. And so learning to take that to a deeper level of, you know, not necessarily having control in the inner world, but, you know, more acceptance, and yeah, taking that existentialism more internally, rather than just curating my life in a certain way, to make myself and ideally others around me happy. So yeah, this work is a lot about all of those things. I think this is one of the last ones in that series. Ooh. And then, so so then the hurricane happened. So I did that whole blooming series, and then the hurricane happened, and that hit us all pretty hard here. And I'm still not living in my house over 2 years later. But you know, it took away, obviously it took away so much from so many of us. You know, I didn't have a home anymore. My husband had to close his coffee shop. I didn't know if I was going to make a living as an artist anymore. And really, for us, one of the largest losses from the hurricane was the loss of all of the trees. You know, we had a very deep connection with those trees, especially in our yard, and we lost all of our trees. And, you know, we used to have this huge canopy just covering our whole backyard, and it's just like desert. So that was really, really difficult. And then 2 weeks after the hurricane, one of my best friends passed away of cancer. And that was the first time I had really dealt with a large death in my life, you know, of someone that wasn't like 90. And then a couple of months later, my dog, who was, you know, my best bud, he died unexpectedly. So I didn't make art that whole time. I allowed grief to turn into depression. I was a useless ball of Netflix watching, salt and vinegar chip eating sloth bear. I just did nothing, and I didn't make any art for a year. And so eventually I was like, I need to make some freaking art, because that's who I am, and who am I if I'm not making art? You know, like, so this self-identity crisis was happening at the same time. Who am I if I'm not making art? So I scheduled this trip, a solo residency. I applied for a regular artist residency, didn't get in. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just do it by myself. So I booked an Airbnb in a treehouse in the mountains of North Georgia. And I went by myself and just left my family behind, whatever, peace out guys. And I had no internet, no TV. It was just like me in this little shack thing in the woods. And my intention was to make art. I was like, I'm gonna make art, damn it. And I'm gonna take the time and like do it. And so I hiked, because I love hiking, and I actually did. I made art, and this was the first piece that I made in over a year. And I did this series of self-portraits, and I was combining, you know, all of these different elements. The wood, these were tree slices from fallen trees from the hurricane, and they were self-portraits because I really needed to take a good, long, hard look at myself. And I wanted to physically cut out the pieces of my self-portrait, because I use that as a metaphor for the losses that I felt. And I felt like, you know, it didn't just feel like the losses of trees and friends and this life that I had gotten accustomed to. It felt like I was losing pieces of myself, and I didn't know how to regain them. And so I was kind of exploring that through these pieces, and also the loss of nature and that connection with myself, with nature, and taking those pieces out of all of that. And part of that week was, you know, like, I don't know, I needed to get my shit together, and I needed to take a good long look at myself and really confront all of those demons, you know. So I'd like create this self-portrait and then cut pieces out or rip pieces out. And then I turned those into slightly larger works, kind of expanding on all of that, combining paper cutting and watercolor. I had done paper cutting years ago primarily, and that was my main medium for, I don't know, 3 years or something like that. So I made all of these pieces when I was in this little cabin by myself in Georgia. And the unexpected thing that happened from that is I actually got out of my depression in 1 week. And it seems like I'm blowing smoke up you guys' asses, you know, I know that. It doesn't seem real, and it wasn't my intention. I wasn't like, I'm gonna go solve my depression in a week in the woods. Like, no, like, that's ridiculous. I just went to make art. But because from being around the trees and, you know, turning off all of the distractions and connecting to myself and my art again, I came back and I felt amazing, and I thought it was temporary. But that was over a year ago now, and I'm still not depressed. And like, some stuff has happened in the past year, don't get me wrong, globally and personally, but I'm still not in that place that I was back then. So so that's my completely unrealistic sounding truth, is that I cured my depression in a week in a cabin in the woods. So then I still didn't really have much of a direction with my work. So honestly, I was just like, I don't know, I'm just gonna make some art. I'm not even gonna think about it too much. And so I'm just kind of further exploring connections between ourselves and nature, and, you know, pieces of us that maybe aren't quite there without the nature, but then they make us whole again, and kind of this back and forth, you know, thinking of things in terms like that. So these are a few of those. And then this is the first one that I made since the pandemic started. And while I have this, you know, ever-present connection with nature, I kind of realized that there also starts to feel a little bit more of an isolation, you know, all of this white blank space. And it's kind of this back and forth between, am I isolated or am I connected? And I think that's a lot of what a lot of us are dealing with right now. You know, some of us are very isolated, but we're trying to stay connected through things like this, through, you know, FaceTiming and Zooming with everybody. And so that's kind of, you know, and then here's just me. I'm sitting right where I'm standing there. Anyways, just, you know, showing the sketchbook version and then the full version. And so yeah, I interrupted myself and I don't know what I was saying. Something about isolation, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so that's basically, yeah, my latest works. And actually some of them are behind me right now. Just kind of this playing around with, are they missing pieces from the person? Are they see-through, or, you know, do they complete the person? Just kind of this, you know, what exactly is going on there. So, and I think is this the last one? And still into that detail, portraits. Okay, this is the last one of those. So purposefully using the same color as the background, again, as if it's like, is it cut out from the portrait? Or is it on top of? You know, I kind of also have gotten more comfortable with not having one exact way that I want people to view my works, you know, being more comfortable with interpretation. So, oh yeah, oops, linoleum cuts. I forgot about these. I've recently gotten into linoleum, and I'm just super playing with this medium so far, and it hasn't gone very far yet because I'm still very new to it, but it's exciting to me, so I thought I'd share these along the same kind of line of thinking. So I feel like I went on for a while, so I'm gonna stop now, but thanks guys.
Thank you so much. Wow. That was so good. So good. I would like to say more, but I want to go ahead to Sarah real quick. Sarah, can you mind taking the rest of the time and share what you have? And then in the next sessions coming up, if you guys are around, I'd love for you to share even more.
Hi, and if someone wants to play music while I share screen, I talked before. So I'm an artist and a librarian, and I do collage work. So I can just do kind of a slideshow of some of the pieces while someone plays music in the background. Michael?
I'm really just looking forward to what you share. So let's just.
Okay. All right, let's try this. All right, so my work, most of the work was made after COVID. Some of it was made before, I probably made this one a little bit before COVID really hit. It was probably more January, February timeframe. And I'm an artist and a librarian, so collage, analog collage, which a lot of people do digital collage where they just manipulate on the screen, but all of mine is hand manipulation. So there is a little bit of a difference. And I use images from books that are usually about to get damaged, or maybe they're just very worn, or as a way to kind of give them a fresh life. And this series, I did do a lot of ballerinas within the series. So this is another ballerina. It is one of the swan. However, I took her skirt off and I added mushrooms around for her skirt, because I do like to play with that element of beauty and a little bit grotesque, kind of like that balance of what is feminine, what is beautiful. And this is the first piece where I started experimenting with adding watercolor. I'm not a very good painter, so painting is a little bit of a leap for me. And just it was very meditative to kind of grid out a line and then just play with what watercolor does and how it flows and how you can get a little more saturation in one area or the other. And there's an element of unexpectedness with watercolor where sometimes it just doesn't do what you want it to do. Let's see. This one I showed before, Ray of Sunshine, and I had an exhibit that was named Ray of Sunshine after this piece, but it's also kind of working with the prism as well as the vintage images and collage. And I always like a little bit of something shiny, so this one has glitter. And I found out that just using glitter and Mod Podge, I didn't have to have color underneath, which for a while I was like painting and then putting glitter on top, but it does a nice solid aesthetic with just the glitter and no paint underneath. Still playing with the rays and kind of how to distort the figure. I don't know if anyone's seen The Lighthouse with Eggers, but it's a great film, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of this piece with the black and white. And then I heightened the 1930s, 1940s jewelry a little bit with adding more of the sparkle to it as well. She kind of has a haunting look to her. And this one's called Spring Coven, also from the ballerina book. So it's a historical, thank you, Heather. It's a historical piece with the gowns, but I thought they look like happy little witches. And they're kind of submerged, they're floating in the space. And this one was definitely made after COVID. And I feel like some of the pieces gave me a little bit more hope. And this is one where I just kind of felt hopeful, creating some positive magic out there. This one's called Corners of the World, kind of dealing with that element of isolation from around the world. The girls from a book I have on Scotland, and I have a book about old houses, and so the house is cut from that. And I think the puffin's from Scotland as well. But I do like to play with the gaudy coloration, and these kind of had that color print quality. I showed this one before as well, Bloom Where You Were Planted, which the title, I really wanted to name the titles to fit the time period where we're all isolated at home. So we're all having to figure out ways to bloom where we're planted at this time. This one's called Resurface. And it's got a little bit more of a magical surrealism element to it. And the mushrooms come up again, a little bit of glitter, and the diver. I think this is my last one, and we have less than 1 minute, but it's fairy tale in isolation. So once again, dealing with isolation, but trying to make it hopeful, happy, cheerful, but there is still a little bit of mystery, and that's about it. Thank you.
I just want to say very quickly how amazing all the work was. It's just remarkable. And I haven't eaten yet, but I feel so full having experienced all of your art. And it's so cool to see how different it is, how it reflects not only who you guys are, but where you are in life and what's happening. It's just remarkable. Thank you so much. 1 o'clock, meet back here. My amazing Malia, my daughter, is going to tell us how not to be fearful and have anxiety. She's a fantastic counselor, so really looking forward to that. and hopefully see you guys then. Thank you so much. So much.
Thanks,